Well, good morning. Thanks very much, Will, and good morning, everyone else. I'm absolutely delighted to be here in Mississauga to make an important transit announcement for the future of the hardworking families here in Mississauga and in Milton and right across the western half of the GTA. And I'm joined today by 7 women and men who've stepped forward to seek elected office as Ontario Liberal Party candidates representing Mississauga, a number of Mississauga ridings or neighbourhoods, as well as Milton and Burlington. And I will also tell you before I get into the content of the announcement this morning, I had the chance to join several of the women and men behind me to take the GO train from Milton Station down to Cooksville Station here in Mississauga. That gave us a chance firsthand to see how things are going on the Milton GO corridor, which of course is the reason that we are gathered here this morning. Now we know that if Ontario is to come out of the pandemic that we have all struggled with for now nearly 2 years, we need to make sure that we have an economic recovery that is underpinned by people and goods being able to move across our most densely populated region in this province. Of course, I'm talking about the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. And for many years, starting when I had the honour of serving as the Minister of Transportation, we have been working hard in this province to dramatically increase the level of GO service on all 7 of the GO transit corridors. What we've experienced, of course, through the years on the Milton corridor, what's known as the Milton corridor, which is conventionally or historically the 3rd busiest line in the GO network, is, of course, a level of service that's been capped because we haven't been able to make the kind of investments that are required to liberate the corridor and to be able to run 2-way all-day rapid service from Milton down to Union and back again. And so today, I am absolutely delighted to announce that if Ontario Liberals are elected next June, we will partner and work closely with the federal government to match their contribution to make sure that we can deliver 2-way all-day 15-minute service on the Milton GO corridor, which is absolutely phenomenal news, again, for the hardworking families in Milton, in Burlington, across Mississauga. This is a dramatic increase in service and in ridership that we expect to see over the years as it's being built out, that will improve the quality of life. It will help us in our collective fight against the climate crisis. And it is so important for us to stress that while Doug Ford and his government are obsessed with a highway project that makes no sense for this region, a highway project in the 413 that independent studies show will not improve gridlock, a highway project that will cost $10 billion and take at least 10 years to build, a highway project that is not a real solution for the hardworking families of Milton and Mississauga. The Ontario Liberal plan to liberate, as I like to say, the Milton GO corridor, to dramatically increase the service and the ridership on this corridor so that the 30,000 people who take this corridor pre-pandemic on a regular basis can grow and grow rapidly. So that number becomes 40,000 and 50,000 and 60,000 and more, so that more cars stay off the roads, so that people can get to and from work or to other activities and spend more time with their loved ones. So quality of life can improve without damaging our environment. This is the kind of plan that will help move this region and this province forward. And I will say as well, it's not an accident that I am gathered today with this crew, this group of volunteers and this group of candidates, I should say, that we have running in this part of our province. Each one of them who is here with me today and others from this region has already stepped up and has already started to advocate for these kinds of investments, again, that will improve our economy, that will improve our quality of life, and that will actually create a post-pandemic Ontario that doesn't just work for the well-connected few. Instead, a post-pandemic Ontario that works for all of us. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, just a reminder to everybody on the line. We have one reporter in the room, so I will take your questions first. If you could please write to the chat on Zoom with your outlet name, I will call on you. First question is Natasha O'Neill from The Pointer.
Good morning.
Hi there.
Duca. I have a question about if elected, would you guys help fund the Lakeshore and Dundas rapid transit here in Mississauga? We have the Huron-Ontario, which is north-south, but we need the east-west as well. And Milton's helpful, but it's in Cooksville. We need this area as well. Can you give me any comments on that?
Well, for sure. I'm very well aware of the two projects that you're talking about. I understand that there's a look, and I said this when I had the chance to serve as transportation minister. One of the biggest challenges that we have in this province, and it's an impact or a negative impact here in Mississauga, it is in my own home community up in York Region. We have not built enough through the many years, and I'm talking decades now. So we need to build in order to catch up, but also keep up with the population growth that we have coming to this area. So I will tell you that before the election campaign, we'll be releasing an entire platform relating to transit and transportation, which will include new capital projects that we would fund should we win the election next year. So I'll say stay tuned for those details. But what I do know is that for the western half of the GTA, we have known for many years that the Milton GO corridor not being truly free to run two-way all-day service has been a real challenge for the hardworking families of Milton and of Mississauga. We already have great service and great ridership on Lakeshore West. You mentioned the Huron-Ontario LRT. I was proud to be the minister who made the announcement to fund that project. This is another important piece. What we're here to announce today, in partnership with the federal government that's prepared to make a real investment, we are going to get this region moving and keep it moving in an environmentally friendly way.
Fantastic. I have a second question about
Sure.
the 413. How do you plan to prevent these types of growth and urban sprawl, kind of like what Doug Ford is pushing with the 413? Regardless if it's built or not, these kinds of developers will always want this sort of sprawl. So what can the provincial or the potentially elected Liberal government do to combat this?
So look, we obviously have a lot of growth projections for this entire region, lots of additional population through immigration that will be coming to this region over the next number of years. We know that. But let's also remember that as Minister of Transportation, I was the first politician to pause the 413, and then I was part of a government that stopped it the first time. We know that Doug Ford has listened to some people, and he's decided to restart the project that I don't think will provide people real relief for gridlock or from gridlock. And it will take more than, it'll take 10 years and a minimum of $10 billion to build. I don't think it's the right solution. That's why I have made very clear that if I'm elected next spring, again, I was the first one to pause it. I'll be the next one to stop it and to stop it once and for all, and make investments in critically needed repairs and education and new schools here in Mississauga and across Ontario. And today, to talk about the Milton GO line, which we know needs to be a two-way all-day GO service for the hardworking families of this part of Ontario. So we're going to continue to build what makes sense, where it makes sense, and we're going to continue to have land planning policies that align the growth to the transit corridors that we are hoping to build and expand. I think that just makes it so much easier for people to leave their cars at home. We see evidence of that not only in Ontario but around the world, and make sure that we have an economic recovery where we can all thrive and still keep our environment clean. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move over to the Zoom line right now. The first question is from Melissa Candelaria from Halton News. I believe she's having microphone problems. If you type your question in, so I'll read it out. But as you say that you will match the federal contribution, can you remind us how much the federal contribution is?
So my understanding is that the federal government did not specify the exact number that they would be prepared to make to this project. They did talk about it being a 50% share. Obviously, that means the remaining balance would be the other 50%. And so I know that through the years, Metrolinx has done a lot of meaningful work with CP, which does own the lion's share of this particular corridor. And we saw two studies all the way back in 2014 that talked about two different approaches to delivering more service on the Milton GO corridor, two different numbers attached to those. If I'm elected Premier in 6 months or 7 months, I'd want to sit down with Metrolinx and get the latest information about exactly what the project would cost. But I am here today to say that the provincial share, the 50% that would fall to the province, would be funded under my government, and we would make sure that the trains are running in both directions every 15 minutes, in particular during peak periods, but all day long and on weekdays and holidays as well.
Okay, Melissa, feel free to type in a follow-up if you'd like. I'll move on to the next question, and it's Laura Stone from the Globe and Mail.
Hi, Stephen. Can you hear me?
I can, Laura. Thanks.
Thank you. So just on your announcement today, it seems like there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. You have to get the federal government on board and match the funding. You have to work with CP. There's all sorts of things. So how exactly would that work? And what's the timeline for getting this done?
So I'll say off the top, I don't think we have to jump through any hoops with the federal government. You might be aware that the federal transport minister, who happens to be a member of parliament representing a Mississauga riding, he actually made the announcement all the way back at the beginning of August that the federal government would make a 50% contribution to this project, requiring, of course, a provincial partner that is prepared to step up and do the right thing. I can tell you, like with all major infrastructure projects in the transit and transportation space, truly delivering full two-way all-day service at regular intervals along the Milton corridor will take some time to make happen, but it'll never actually happen if a premier doesn't step up and do the right thing. And while Doug Ford and his team have been off telling everybody under the sun, in particular their friends, that they're going to build a highway that delivers no real relief for commuters, a highway in the 413 that's going to take 10 years and $10 billion, a highway that may in fact be tolled because Doug Ford's been silent about whether that highway he wants to build, a highway that I call a mirage in terms of the relief that it will not provide for commuters in the west end of the GTA. We'll get on with building the Milton GO corridor so we can deliver the trains more rapidly, so the people who live and work near this corridor in Milton, in Mississauga, and elsewhere actually get real relief and get it in a way that helps us also confront the climate crisis. This one, to me, checks all the boxes, and it's something we need to do urgently.
Thanks. And just on, you've talked a lot about Highway 413. What about the Bradford bypass? The Premier and Transportation Minister are up there at 10 o'clock making an announcement. What is your position on that, and how would it differ, if it differs, from what the government is currently proposing?
So look, I have a lot of questions about the Bradford bypass. I think there's a couple of small distinctions, one in particular, between the 413 and the Bradford bypass, and that is that there's a lot more municipal support. It's not universal, it's not across the board, but there is a lot more municipal support for the Bradford bypass, and that's why I want the conversation to continue. In particular, I want the conversation to continue on the bypass because we have studies that the entire project is based on that are more than 2 decades old. And so what I've said very clearly is no shovel should go on the ground, on the Bradford bypass until all of those studies are updated in an open and transparent way, not decisions being made behind closed doors, rewarding friends or friends of friends or family and friends or any of that stuff. I want to see those studies updated before any shovel goes in the ground on the Bradford bypass. The 413, on the other hand, at $10 billion in 10 years, a project where we've done independent studies in the past, one that was started by me when I was Transportation Minister, that shows that there will be no real relief, no real benefit that flows to commuters in the west end of the GTA, and it has virtually no municipal support. And that's a really important point to remember. Many, many years ago, almost every municipality through the 413 corridor were supportive of this highway. Today, I believe there's only one. The rest of the lower tier municipalities, the local towns and cities, are all opposed to the 413. So I want to move in a different direction. I want to make sure that we are expanding the Milton GO corridor. And in the coming weeks and months, I'll be talking about other transit and transportation solutions for the GTHA.
Okay, the next question is from Laura Steiner from the Milton Reporter.
Good morning, Mr. Del Duca.
Morning.
Milton is forecast to get a two-way all-day GO service by 2051. How will the announcement today affect that schedule?
Well, I think that's far, far too far in the future. I think if you, in particular, think to the pre-pandemic levels and the volume that we had on the Milton corridor, third busiest corridor in the entire GO network, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30,000 people taking trains along the GO corridor, and knowing that we need to raise the level of service and the frequency of the service so that it can match, for example, Lakeshore West and Lakeshore East and the Barrie GO corridor and others in the system. And we've seen explosive growth in Milton, around Milton, here in Mississauga. We need to make sure that we are building this. The really good news is that previous projections and previous conversations about the Milton GO corridor never had a federal partner at the table. But now we do. All the way back at the beginning of August, when the federal Minister of Transport said very clearly, and he's repeated it since the election, providing 50% of the funding towards this project is something he is deeply committed to. That is so important for us to hear. So we have a willing federal partner. If I'm elected Premier in 7 months, I'll step up to the plate. We'll fund the other 50%. And we'll get this done long before 2051.
Okay, do you have a follow-up?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there are no other questions on the line. Melissa Candelaria, if you have a follow-up question to your first one, you can go ahead now.